Broadcasting this live on my YouTube channel and also on Insight Timer. Wherever you're watching this from, welcome. Welcome Norma, Pamela, Loretta, Sheila, MCB, Nancy, Francis, Lotus, Ran, Carmel, Adrian, Peggy, and everyone else who is here. So what is the topic? What is wise confidence? One of the themes of my work is that every virtue, every quality casts a shadow. And the same is true with the quality of confidence. We have one extreme, which is self-doubt. We have another extreme, which is arrogance or pretentiousness. And in the middle, there is wise confidence. In wise confidence, you are aware of your strengths, but you're also aware of your weaknesses. You're not underestimating yourself, but you're also not underestimating the path ahead of you. You have a healthy dose of respect for the challenges ahead. And you're just focused on showing up as your best self, showing up with the 5 elements of wise confidence: determination, integrity, self-belief, courage, and optimism. And these form the acronym DISCO. So that's what wise confidence is about. It's not a superficial fix to self-doubt or low self-esteem. It doesn't rely on hacks and quick formulas. It is about a permanent transformation of your identity. That is the core of this work. Moving from your conditioned identity, the person that you were conditioned to be, to your aspirational identity, the person you want to be. And everything in this series is about aiding us to go through this journey from the old self to the new self. We talked about the 4 core tools of working with our states, positive and negative. And they are mindset, witnessing, imagination, and embodiment. And so now we are moving towards the end of the book. This is chapter 17 of 20. We have 2 more classes in this series, and then the book will be launched. The book is already available for pre-order for those of you who want to dive deeper, and you can find more information at wiseconfidencebook.com. So today, this class covers the longest chapter of the book, which is about how to show up in our relationships in a way that is authentic and empowering. In this process of wise confidence, we are changing our identity. We are changing who we are at our core, or who we see ourselves, our self-image. And the way we show up in our relationships will enforce our conditioning, or it will help us become more of who we want to be. And we'll face many challenges in relating from our new empowered self. And one of these core challenges is that there are going to be toxic people. There are going to be people who are not helping us be our best self, but who are expecting us to be our conditioned self. How do we have the right people in our life? And how do we know how to relate in an empowering and authentic way to every person in our life? That is the theme of today. So I will open with some quotes, and I am aware that the theme of today is more edgy than the theme of the other classes. And for sure, I will say certain things that may raise some eyebrows or not be the type of thing that we expect to hear in mindfulness, meditation, and spirituality, but they are the fruit of my study, my practice, my teaching and coaching, and they're also deeply aligned with some lineages of spiritual teachings that I resonate with. So this first one is from the Buddha, and he says, "In the path, keep the company of those who are like you or higher. There's no place for the company of fools." And throughout this class, you'll understand why. There's this quote, I couldn't find The author is attributed to different people, but I find it to be very true that when the wrong people leave your life, the right things start to happen. The way you relate to others is an expression of how you relate to yourself. We are unconsciously sending signals to people around us through our body language, through our words, through our voice and appearance. Signals telling them who we are and how they should treat us, how they should see us. We are training people how they should treat us. And so changing the way you relate with people and changing the people you choose to have in your life is not only an expression of your underlying beliefs, but also an avenue for you to change those beliefs. It's a two-way street, as many of the things that I share in this series. So we're going to cover these two aspects of the work in this theme. The first is changing the people you choose to have in your life. And why is that important? Because it is very clear from a lot of research that mindset, emotions, ideas are contagious. You tend to adopt the same way of thinking, the same goals, the same habits, the same ideals as people you spend a lot of time with. And so you can spend time with people who reinforce your conditioned identity or who reinforce your aspirational identity. And the second aspect is changing the way that we relate to the people who are in our life. Either because we choose to have them in our lives, but sometimes it's also not helpful, or because we don't have much choice. If you allow people to be in your life who disrespect you, who treat you poorly, who manipulate you subtly or not so subtly, who excessively criticize you, if you allow that to happen, you are sending a message to your subconscious mind that you don't have much value. And this weakens your confidence, your willpower, your motivation. Living in this way is training you to lack confidence. It's keeping you chained to the conditioned self. So we need to learn how to set boundaries, how to speak assertively and hold our ground, how to remove toxic people from our life. And when you do that, you're sending the opposite message to yourself, that I matter, that I have value, that my values and aspirations and goals are important. You're telling yourself that you are worthy. And then other people also begin to feel the same. Give me the boundary tools. Yes, we'll talk about them extensively. Turning on the cooler here. So there are three major steps or themes of today. The first one is reviewing our influencers, and this one we have also talked about in the Mindful Self-Discipline series. It's going to be mostly a recap here. The second one is understanding toxicity and knowing how to remove toxic people. And the third one is knowing how to set boundaries. So these are the three main themes we're going to cover today. So let's start with the first one. I'm just going to paste it here so we have some anchor of what we're talking about. Review your influencers. Are people in your life feeding your self-confidence or your self-doubt? Are the things that you read, watch, listen to, are they helping you become the person you want to be, or are they feeding your conditioning? We are profoundly influenced by the people we spend time with. There are several studies showing this. I'm not going to go in depth into this. You can read the book to learn more. But I think that this is a point that most of us agreed. There is a deeply ingrained conditioning in our brain to conform with social standards so that we can be accepted, so that we can fit in. And in our brain, that means we have more chances of survival. And for that purpose, we will adopt the same narratives, preferences, biases, habits, and goals as the people in our tribe. We will people please. We will let go of our authenticity, of our uniqueness to some degree, so that we can fit in. And we'll tend to care a lot about what other people think, especially what they think of us. And all of this, as you who have been listening to me for a long time, you might have already realized, all of this is living outside in. You are allowing your outside to determine your inside. You're allowing your environment, which includes the people in your life, to shape how you should think and what you should feel, what you should pursue, etc. And when you're living outside in, you feel disempowered. You're not fully grounded within yourself. So knowing that there is a strong gravity pulling us to be like the people we associate ourselves with, it is wise to choose those people very carefully. And the people we associate ourselves with is not only people in our family, in our friend circle, in our partner, etc., but also anyone who can plant an idea in our mind. So the blogs and articles you read, the accounts you follow on social media, the people you watch on YouTube, the lives that you watch on Inside Timer, everything, the books you read. All of these things are ways that influences are coming into your life. So the key takeaway here is to surround yourself with people, content, and ideas that affirm your aspirational reality. And that is the only shortcut that I know exists in this process. Everything else is, in a way, work. It's an effort that requires awareness and willpower. But this of surrounding yourself with the right people, this is a shortcut. Perhaps the only shortcut, both in self-discipline and self-confidence and everything else. So let me show you an image. Well, maybe later. Let me move on a little bit first. Okay, let me see if there are any questions. Sometimes we try to be such good friends with people, we forget our own best interest. To be our own best friend first, yes. And so when we're talking about influencers, sources of influence, in the past it's just people that we physically spend time with. Decades ago, or people we read. The TV show, that's it. But now we have opened our minds to thousands of influences every day as we scroll social media or as we click random articles on the web. As you are scrolling in social media, you will find yourself consciously or unconsciously often comparing yourself, comparing your appearance, your income, your children, your intelligence, your achievements to the highly curated version of other people's lives, to a fiction. Social media is a tool of unawareness. At least the way that it is now, the way that the companies want us to use these services and have built their apps for us to use it in that way. Because these services, they make money when you are hooked, when you are consuming. They make money when you click, when you are distracted. They don't make money when you're thinking, pausing, absorbing, transforming yourself. That is useless for them. They want to minimize that and maximize this. And so they make sure that you're consuming information so fast that you're always, clicking something, and then they can charge their advertisers. And so you begin by, let's say that you're scrolling through one of these apps, be it video or image, and you see an image or you see a video, and that has already created an impact in your mind, conscious and subconscious. It has planted a seed. And before you have the time to reflect about whether that is true or not, whether you agree with that or not, whether the assumptions of that message are helpful for you or not, if this is going to help you take a step toward your aspiration or your conditioning, before you have time to stop and reflect, you have already scrolled to the next one and then got in another seed. And so, like this, we go and hit one dopamine button after another. And all of these influences are entering our mind, our subconscious mind, without much of a filter. They are creating a new conditioned identity while you think you're having fun. And so the bottom line for me is that the use of social media is stimulating unhealthy comparisons, envy, distraction, self-obsession. It is influencing you in ways that you probably don't imagine. It's changing your values without you noticing. And you may say, yes, but I can kind of curate the people that come in my feed. To a certain degree we can, and then there's whatever those social media companies decide to put, the ads they decide to put on our feeds. But even in curating the people, it's still a lot. It's a lot of information. And you don't really control what's coming. Social media keeps us hooked, attached to that ephemeral sense of satisfaction that comes from getting likes, hearts, followers. It is hurting our ability to stay motivated in the pursuit of meaningful goals, because it is training our brain that, hey, when you want that hit of dopamine that you would get by achieving a difficult long-term goal, don't worry about that. You can just click these buttons, scroll a little bit, watch something fun, etc., something unexpected, and you're going to have that same dopamine. Well, it's not the same dopamine. It's a different dopamine, but it passes. Passes as the same. So we are training ourselves to be less motivated on living a life of purpose as we are unconsciously pursuing a life of pleasure. Social media is thus the worship of junk dopamine. It's the temple of social validation. Where is my... I'm trying to find my image here. There you go. It's the temple of social validation. The religion of living outside in. If you want to live inside out, it is much easier if you avoid it. If you have nothing to do with it. And that's what I do. I do not have any of these apps on my phone. I do not spend any minute per week on social media. If a friend sends me a specific Instagram video or something that they think is meaningful for me to watch, depending on the friend, I'll go and watch it, and that's it. There are other ways to stay connected with friends of getting information that don't have these drawbacks. And if you think I'm exaggerating, then try this. Delete all social media apps for a month. And don't log in the browser. And notice how that impacts you. Then install them again and see what happens. So let me see if there are any thoughts. Do we risk living in a bubble if we surround ourselves with only those who are similar? I'm not suggesting that you only surround yourself with people who share the same ideas, but people who share the same ideals. You may disagree on fundamental levels, and it's healthy to reflect on different ways of thinking and achieving the same thing. What about keep your enemies close? Well, would you use that argument to keep viruses in your body? Would that be helpful? This enemy is not a normal enemy. This enemy has the most brilliant minds in the world working on pushing our human psychological weaknesses to keep us hooked so they can keep making money. They know everything that there is to know, and they explore it masterfully in terms of our psychology. Sometimes it feels as if my mind becomes a stroboscope, shooting words and pictures hysterically, and I realize it's the result of scrolling around. Yes. Are we being honest in our relationships if we don't have boundaries? Good question. I'm going to cover boundaries soon. How do we help my husband who can't get enough of social media watching funny animals? Well, does he have an aspiration? Does he have something that he wants to achieve, to become, to do? If he does, then that can be the motivation to change behavior. If he doesn't, then what can we do? That's why aspiration is the first pillar. Now, is it possible? One of my long-term readers has asked me, well, but it's also possible to use social media in a way that is more conscious. Yes. Is it possible to use social media without any of these effects? Maybe. But that's not how these services are programmed. And so you'll be definitely swimming against the stream. That's not how they want you to use those apps. So everything in those apps is built so that you don't use it in this way. Very few people have the capacity to use social media in a mindful, empowering way. Even fewer can do that consistently without suffering any unintended side effects. And for those that can make this happen, it's not without effort. And I wonder if that effort could not be better spent elsewhere. So I believe that complete abstinence is the most effective approach. If that's not possible for you, then you need to have strong boundaries. And I recommend you do some social media fasts. There's in the Mindful Self-Discipline workbook. So if you go to mindfulselfdiscipline.com/workbook, there are 2 exercises there that are relevant to social media: the dopamine detox and mindful technology use. And there's also the influencer's detox. So there are actually 3 exercises in the MSD workbook about this. So the influencer's detox exercise, I'm just going to briefly cover it because it's there in the workbook. The idea is that you list all the people that you spend time with, whether you have direct contact or indirect contact, including people you read, listen to, etc. And then with each one of them, you reflect, how is this person, how is this source influencing me? How do I feel right after I spend time with them? Do I feel negative? Do I feel agitated, anxious, stressed? Or do I feel positive? I feel more calm, more empowered, more focused. Do they make me feel more inclined to follow my aspirations and live a better life, or less inclined? And then you decide for each of those people, for each of those sources, do I want more of this or do I want less of this? And then you take action. Some of them will be like, yes, this is a good influence. I want more of this. Great. Keep them close. Others like, no, I don't want to spend time with this person anymore at all, if possible. They have unhealthy life habits. Their values are not aligned with mine, or they have toxic behaviors. They would undermine my growth. So keep them out at all costs, especially if they are toxic. And then there are people who are in the middle. It's complicated. And then you need to relate wisely. Maybe are those people who have a mix of positive and negative influence, or those who have negative influence, but we can't eliminate them from our life entirely, at least not now. Maybe it's your boss or a colleague, and yes, you're looking for another job, but for a while, they're going to be there. So then you need to learn to set boundaries. I really don't know what constitutes social media. Well, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Reddit to some extent. I haven't used social media in 2 months and the feeling is priceless. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Can I not put my own values to others, making me an influencer? Yes, you can, but you're going into the mud and you're going to get muddy as well. There are people out there who just go to social media to post something, to answer comments from other people in there, and they don't consume anything. And that takes a lot of discipline. That takes you being really purposeful. It's possible. You have to see if that matches what you want to do. Would I classify Insight Timer as social media? Well, no, not necessarily. It's a content website like YouTube. It's more of a content website. You know, you're not posting anything on Insight Timer. Are there problems also with consuming too much content and not knowing how to digest? Yes, the same thing as YouTube. It can be addictive, but it doesn't have all the problems that social media websites have. The problem is when social media is required for job and professional success. I know. I've made a conscious choice to not rely on social media growth for my business, to rely more on books, SEO, etc. So there are options. Right? It's not always required, but it's a tough choice, definitely. Thank you, Nancy, for putting in the link. So, all right, so let's move on to step number 2, which is removing toxic people. Removing toxic people. Now, what do I mean by toxic people? People who, well, in some cases it's quite obvious, people who are narcissists, psychopaths, drama queens, people who are aggressive, manipulative, sadistic, people who are unashamedly selfish and uncaring. All of these are toxic influences in our life. And we need to be smart about it. We cannot be naive. Some people don't want us to be confident or empowered. Maybe because they don't want you to outshine them. Maybe they just don't care about you. And confidence is a form of power. They don't want you to have it. They're mesmerized by confidence, but they don't want you to be confident. There are also people who secretly want to keep you down so that they don't feel threatened or inadequate in their presence. This has happened with some friends of mine. A decade ago, we were talking about, we want to quit our 9-to-5s and do something more meaningful and start our own business, working with something that is more aligned. And we were both apparently equally passionate about it. But I took action and he didn't. Therefore, I have a different life now and he has the same life, 10 years after. And I can sense that there's a sense of like they're not so happy. They feel kind of inadequate. And so some people, not this case, but some people, they don't want that to happen, so they want to keep you down. Now, it's important to understand that toxic people are confidence killers. In their own insecurity, they will attempt to feel better by placing themselves above you, explicitly or implicitly. It's very likely that you have some people like this in your life already, that this is resonating. And if not, it's very likely that you will meet them. And they play many games. They play subtle psychological games. often unaware. It's just who they are. They may keep you confused about what's really happening by mixing the good with the bad. For example, sometimes they do something that pleases you, but just because that makes you more useful to them. They may praise ideals of cooperation, of forgiveness, of acceptance, of kindness, as long as that applies to you, not to them. And they use these ideas to subtly force you to let them do what they want. If you become a Buddhist, they love it because they think you're going to forgive everything and accept and let go. And in the case of some people following spirituality, that's what they believe in. That's not what I believe in. And they know how to quickly identify whatever is giving you strength, whatever is giving you certainty. And they will undermine that with distortions, with lies, with emotional manipulation. They are experts at their craft, and they will make you doubt your truth, your insights, your values. So what do we do? Well, we need to first learn to identify toxic behavior. So we know it when we see it. And then to unapologetically cut it out from our lives. The sooner we do that, the better. And I'm going to share some tips and some concepts about how they operate and why most of us find it hard to remove them from our lives and what we should do instead. Now, these concepts may not apply to every toxic person out there. They help you deal with even the most toxic. And so if it's just a little bit toxic, then you know how to use your discernment to apply these tools in the right dosage. All right, so let me have a look at the comments. Unfortunately, it is resonating. So are the previous episodes recorded? There is no way to access previous live episodes on YouTube, on Insight Timer. But I have recorded them and I've made them part of my app, Mindful Self-Discipline. If you like, you can get a free trial to the app and start watching them. So yes, the previous 9 episodes are there already. How do you recognize the game? Yeah, so that's why I'm talking. That's why I'm sharing exactly what they do, so that we have a map in our mind. Like, oh, now I can see. I couldn't see it. I knew that there was something wrong. I just couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't articulate it. Now I can see exactly what it is. And a lot of this is from experience with toxic people in my own family, and also as a coach working with people who have, struggled with this for a very long time. If the toxic person is my aging mother and I want to establish a relationship with her, well, then that goes into the mixed state. So first of all, I'm assuming that the decision that you want to establish a relationship with her is aligned with your values. So just make sure that it is aligned with your values. And if it is, then it's all about setting boundaries. That's step number 3 that's coming soon. So there are 4 traps that prevent us from removing toxic people in our life. And we need to know these traps so we don't fall for them. The first one is the trap that I call the shadow of your virtues. And you probably already know what that means. Every virtue casts a shadow. Your virtues are your superpowers. They are your strengths, your qualities. What do I mean by virtues? Things like courage, patience, kindness, confidence, focus, resilience, grit. All of these are virtues. But every virtue casts a shadow. And your greatest strengths, when overused and not balanced, or when applied to the wrong situation, will be the source of your greatest weaknesses. I cannot emphasize this enough. Your greatest strengths will often be the source of your greatest weaknesses. It took me years to realize what this means experientially. And toxic people are good at spotting that. So think of every virtue as a tool. If the only tool you have is a hammer, because you're always using the same virtue, acceptance. Acceptance is a virtue, yes. Wonderful. If you don't have it, please develop it. Your life will be better. But if that's the only tool in your toolbox, if that's the way you meet every challenge, then you will often be using the wrong tool for the job. Just like you cannot use a hammer for every job. Try to fix a watch with a hammer, or open a can of tomato sauce with a hammer. It's not the right tool for the job. And so the way forward is that you cultivate virtues and qualities that are the opposite of the qualities you have. There are some people out there who have no trouble with toxic people in their life because they don't have those virtues that the opposite is being exploited. The problem is what I call the virtues of niceness. Tolerance, compassion, love, kindness, all of these are virtues, all of these are good, but as with every virtue, they have a shadow. They are the virtue of niceness. When you have them, you are considered a nice person. But they are not always the answer. Tolerance is not always the answer, nor is compassion, kindness, or forgiveness. Showing up with these virtues needs to be a choice. It's something that you choose to do in the moment, not something that is a compulsion that you have to because that's the only way you know how to deal. When a toxic person is deliberately invading your space, is deliberately trying to manipulate you for their own selfish desires, what you need in that moment is not to be more loving, is not to be more tolerant, is not to be kind. What you need in that moment is the ability to show up with the opposite strengths of assertiveness and boundaries. Otherwise, you become a doormat. And a doormat is not confident, nor powerful, nor happy. And so toxic people will take advantage of your virtues. When they know you have the virtues of niceness, when they know you lack the ability to set boundaries, they feel in control. They know that if you cross those boundaries, you will accept. That if they are mean, you will tolerate it. That if they do something wrong, you will forgive them, even without them asking. They know that you will continue to be kind, no matter what they do to you. They know that that is who you are, and that you would hate to be any different. They know you won't try to fully display your strengths, because you believe you need to be humble and hide them. They know you will not go against them because you're a team player that likes to cooperate. And the other thing is they will control you with shame. Whenever they see you deviating from your virtues of goodness, whenever they see you not being good enough of a Buddhist, they will shame you, or a Christian, or whatever is that. They will shame you, knowing that you will feel bad about it and quickly take a step back. Shame is the shadow side of goodness. Good people are ashamed of being associated with bad behaviors. Bad people are not ashamed to be associated with anything that gives them an advantage. And so people will project shame onto you. Some people will. And then you have a choice. a choice that you didn't maybe knew you had. You have a choice to accept that shame or to reject it. If you accept the shame imposed on you by others, you are living outside in. You are letting your outside determine your inside. You're letting them tell you how you should be and what you should feel. When you're living inside out, nobody can make you feel anything without your permission. They can press the buttons, they can dump their negativity on you, but they can't make you feel negative. When you feel solid at your core, you know you have the power to process these negative inputs in a way that is aligned with your values. Many of these things I had to learn the hard way, by making the mistakes and then being exposed to the ideas that don't help and then changing. Tolerance is a virtue. It's one of the virtues of niceness. Here are the virtues of being nice. We need to balance them with the virtues of strength. Then we are safer. Then these virtues are protected. Otherwise, if you only have these, you will become a doormat. You will not live the best conditions that you can live in your life. And eventually you will come to resent these very virtues that are the good in you. And when you resent the thing that is the good in you, what's the point? Instead, we need to balance this by bringing the opposite. And bringing the opposite will never feel easy. Bringing the opposite will feel artificial. You feel like, this is who I am. I don't know how to be like this. I know you don't know. That's why this is a problem. It feels hard. It feels unnatural. Exactly because you don't have it. You have never thought in this way. Maybe this is not the case for you exactly with being nice versus being strong, but with any other complementary virtue to your strengths, it will always feel like, I don't know how to do that. I know how to do this. I know. That is the challenge. In life, you get more of what you tolerate. So tolerance is a virtue, but you get more of what you tolerate. Good people know that fact. Toxic people know that fact. Toxic people make use of your tolerance to meet their selfish ends. They are constantly crossing your boundaries to see how far they will go. And when you protest, they go a little farther also, because they know that you will release that protest, that you will be quiet. And nice people with down boundaries, they enable that even further, in the hope that the other person will eventually have some goodness in them, that they will realize that they are wrong and that they will stop on their own. It's never going to happen. If they're toxic people, it's never going to happen. They don't think like you. They don't feel like you. They don't have the same values. So if you want to make yourself immune to toxic people, you have to reject shame. Let nobody make you feel shame. In your own reflection, if you realize you did something wrong and the feeling of shame comes, fine. Use that as a fuel for self-growth. But don't accept the shame projected by other people, as that is often a tool of manipulation. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is balance your virtues. Become a more complete human being by having the capacity to play the opposite game, if the situation calls for it. When you're fighting demons, don't try to be an angel. That only works in the movies. So these virtues of strength, they give you the capacity to say a powerful no to something that is not right, to to something that is not aligned to your values. And then to stay in that no like a mountain without budging. To hold your ground as the narcissist or whatever toxic person is repeatedly attempts to shame you for setting boundaries. When you set boundaries, you're doing something right. That doesn't mean other people will recognize you. Get ready to be labeled oversensitive, misunderstanding, can't take a joke, uptight, whatever. This is my space. Know the wrongs that you will not tolerate, and then don't tolerate them, come what may. So that, my friends, is the first trap, the shadow of your virtues, the biggest trap that prevents us from removing toxic people in our lives. Right, let me go through the many comments. It seems that this class is resonating and bringing lots of emotions from people, as I thought it would. So my daughter has toxic behavior. Yes, unfortunately, many times it's someone very close. I had a talk with a friend, 15 years old son, who has... What do I do? I said, look at your watch, and said, oops, I need to go. Yes. The bigger the front, the bigger the back. Those kind of people find their way around your assertion as well. Either way, they get control. No. We can learn how to be effective in our boundaries. They are effective at crossing boundaries, but we can know how to be stronger. We're not going to win their friendship, and we don't want that. We're going to keep our sanity, our well-being. Empathy can make you understand why they act the way they do, but can make you excuse and put up with it at your own expense. Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying with the shadow of your virtues. It's so hard to realize and apply that. They don't share your values, yes. This resonates a lot. I've been exploited by the closest people. Yes. And so that takes me to the second trap, which is taking the wrong project. Another trap that keeps us disempowered when dealing with toxic people is that we're trying to reform them. We're trying to change them. But the truth is, in most cases, they don't want to change. Why would they change? Their behavior is not bothering them. It's bothering you. Sounds like you have a problem, not them. That's the way they think. It's not your job to change them if they don't want to be changed. Taking a toxic person as a project is a poor allocation of your precious resources of time and energy. Behavior change and personal growth is difficult even when you're actively, consciously searching it. What to say if you don't want to change? It's impossible. It's not your responsibility to make life easier for everyone around you. It's your responsibility to be the best version of yourself, to be your aspirational identity, then to live and serve from that place. So let me just put here, so we have a ground of what we're talking. The trap 1. Trap 2 was taking the wrong project. And then we're going to talk now about trap number 3, which is fearing the wrong thing. Maria, I've never heard this being expressed this way. I now see how balanced my gifts with the alternate strength rather than focusing more on if. Yes. Thank you, Evian. Thank you. Now, sharing many of these things within the spiritual context of meditation, etc., that's not welcomed by everyone. Some people want to just be the virtue of niceness, to respond everything with love and kindness and compassion. But I've seen almost in every case that backfiring. It just has happened so many times. And I'll share later on in this session if we have time. The time is flying. I've kind of become passionate about this topic. We'll see why that's not good. So, trap number 3, fearing the wrong thing. You may be afraid of cutting ties. Part of you may be afraid of cutting a bond, of being rejected, of being misjudged, of ending up alone. It's especially the case if it's a family member, a partner, a close friend. If it's a child that still needs you in development ages, then it's our responsibility to do what we can do as a parent. Right? So that's a little bit different. We also balance what's good for us with our duties and responsibilities. But in many cases, we are focusing on the pain we imagine we would feel by cutting those toxic people out. And we are ignoring the pain that we're actually feeling right now. Maybe you're not aware enough of all the limitations and negativity brought about their presence in your life and the long-term effects of that. If you were fully aware of the costs of having a toxic person in your life, then the price of cutting them out will feel like a low price to pay for your freedom, your sanity, your well-being, your space. It is better to be rejected than to be abused in any way. And that's a shift in thinking. For some people that may feel obvious, for others it's like, is it? It's better to be alone than in an abusive relationship. Loneliness feels scary when you don't have an aspiration to pursue, when you're not fully engaged in life in a meaningful way. So the solution is to be engaged in life in a meaningful way, to find and pursue your aspirations. You shouldn't be worried if a narcissist rejects you. You should be worried if they don't. You should be worried if they don't reject you. Because if they don't reject you, it's because they see you as an easy target for their manipulative games. That would mean that your conditioned identity is broadcasting signals of fragility, of neediness, and they are ready to exploit that. If this is happening for you, know that you can stop this. If there are people in your life who cannot be friends of your aspirational identity, why are they in your life? They're only pulling you back. Very clear example, if you have a bunch of friends that you only connect when you're drinking alcohol and you have decided to stop drinking alcohol, can you hang out with those friends? Probably not. And that would be a low price to pay. You will get better friends, friends that are now more aligned. There's a quote from Swami Vivekananda that I love. Anything that makes you weak, physically, intellectually, or spiritually, reject it as poison. And I do my best to live by this quote. Thank you, Char. Even to see a call or a text pop up from the toxic relative is enough to trigger you. Yes. And then that triggers you to go into a rabbit hole of thinking that spurs negativity inside of you, and that at the very least wastes your mental energy on something that is going to go nowhere. While that time and that energy could be spent focusing on your aspirations, on your goals, on being your best self. And there's even a subtler layer of manipulation that may be happening. Maybe you're worried that what they say about you is right. That they are, and they tell you that they are they're helping you grow. Right? The thing is, toxic people are experts at seeing your flaws and terrible at seeing theirs. And they're also really good at making up flaws that you don't have. But then you get caught up thinking, and they convince you that you have those flaws and that you have to work on those things. While the real problem, which is their behavior, is you get distracted away from that. And they will point out your flaws to you, either real or imagined, as a way of asserting their dominance, but under the disguise of helping you grow. And you, being a good person, being a humble person, being a growth-oriented person, you will listen. And there may be some truth in what they say. That's what makes it challenging. If everything they say is just pure lies and evil, then it's easy. Like, okay, get out of my life. But it's a trap because there might be some seeds of truth there. But they don't have your interests, your best interest at heart. They're using your virtues against you. No matter how nutritious a meal may be, if there's poison mixed with it, don't eat it. Seek your nourishment elsewhere. There may be truth in what they say. There may be some good intentions in what they say. But if there's poison mixed in it, it's not worth it. So your conditioned identity may have trouble with boundaries and stays hooked in a relationship that doesn't serve. Your aspirational identity doesn't struggle with boundaries. Your higher self is not fearful of rejection or loneliness. It is strong, authentic, and self-reliant. That is who you are. Live, love, and relate from that place. When you live from your empowered self, narcissists will have no interest in you. Living inside out is the best narcissist repellent. Because they can smell it, that's a game they cannot win, not with you. Will they speak ill of you? Yes, they speak ill of everybody. But they won't affect you. Gaslighting, yes. I think it's hardest in marriages when people are tied up with kids and financials, yes. Absolutely. Now, the fourth and last trap to removing toxic people in our life is believing that malice doesn't exist. And that's a trap that many people in the spiritual world or in the New Age world, or sometimes even in the therapy world, they fall into. All the classical spiritual traditions talk about this. Malevolence exists. The more you ignore this fact, the more you are vulnerable to being a victim. When you think the enemy doesn't exist, you're not ready to face him or her. You stay in relationships with people who are toxic because you don't understand how malevolence works. And that can hold you back in your life, big time. It can undermine your confidence and your mental health. And I know this is an uncommon opinion among popular teachers, among meditation teachers, that somehow it seems that spirituality is about always being loving and kind and tolerant and accepting and letting go. Or that it's always about thy will be done. If it's happening, it must be the will of God. There is a way to read religion and spirituality that takes you to that point of view. And I've been there, and I have seen what this can do to people. So, the message that I'm sharing here may raise some eyebrows, make some people question how enlightened I am. Yet I hold my ground on what I have seen. And I'm not alone. There have been many enlightened masters that, contrary to several popular teachings, they believe in setting boundaries and they believe in self-defense. There are some monks and lamas that would say, no, you should never use violence. I've been with a yogi once, a very accomplished yogi, that he said, if someone attacks you physically, it's your duty to defend yourself. Very different opinions about the same thing. My guru has said, in Indian culture there are 33 million gods. Not one of them is without a weapon. In Asia, you go to many Buddhist temples, and that's a religion of non-violence, and you see a fierce protector spirit at the entrance. Malevolence exists, evil exists, toxicity exists. We cannot be naive about this. If we are naive about this, we are making it more difficult for goodness to grow in us and in society. We gotta be pragmatic. If there are no consequences to evil, evil will spread and good will suffer. If you don't stop it, it won't stop. So defending yourself against unfair treatment is not the enemy of goodness. It's the protector of goodness. It's not a sin. It's your duty. In my work as a meditation teacher, I do not emphasize compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, and living in the moment. All of that is good. They are important virtues, and they have their place. But I also am aware that they are a delicious feast for evil influences in your life. So, in my life and teachings, I emphasize growth, empowerment, focus, purpose. So in closing this section, to remove evil or toxic influences in your life, you need two things. You need clarity and you need to take action. You need determination to take action. In this class and in chapter 17 of the book, I've done the best that I can to help you have clarity. Now, the determination has to come from you. The determination to remove toxicity from your life is a great gift that you give yourself, a true act of self-love. Are you ready to make this commitment to yourself? All right, let me see if there are questions. Lots of comments in this one, so it's really resonating. I've had no contact with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law for almost 10 years. I wish I could tell my teenage self that they never... Yes. Sometimes a mother-in-law, it's a father-in-law. There's the saying. I really needed to hear this. Sometimes a toxic person can come dressed as a victim. Oh yes, they do that all the time. They are good at making themselves look like the victim and you looking like the aggressor. And when you do set boundaries, some of them will be able to do that. It doesn't matter. Some years ago, I had to set some severe boundaries with a member in my family. And I got all this backlash from the family. Saying that, oh, she's a difficult person, but we need to understand and work around, etc., etc. So I've worked around for 30 years. Now I'm done. And so this was about 4 years ago. Now, other than 2 people in the family who took her side, everyone else fully sees and fully understands and supports my decision. And some of them are making similar decisions. Not everyone will be ready to see the truth and to take action that requires courage. But some people will. And then if you are the first, you're giving them permission to do the same. The flying monkeys, absolutely, that is the term. Thank you, Mercy. How do we know if we are the toxic ones or not? Tara, you have to do some deep self-reflection. But I'll already tell you that toxic people typically don't ask themselves that question. In their mind, they are never wrong. I saw this picture quote about narcissism the other day. And it's like when you share that something that they did was not right or was crossing boundaries, the way that they reply is, it never happened. If it did, it wasn't exactly like that. If it was, it wasn't that bad. And if it was that bad, it was your fault. Like, that's kind of their way of thinking. It's hilarious, but it's also very sad and true. Yeah, good. This needs to be a TED Talk, all right? Maybe one day it will be. Justice to oneself is a spiritual law. Yes, I can see many hearts. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And all of this is based on chapter 17 of the book. So I think you will love that chapter. There's a reason why it's the longest chapter of the book. And you can pre-order it at wiseconfidencebook.com. The more pre-orders we get and orders in the first week, that's going to help this book get into the hands of more people. It's how the thing works. So thank you for your support for those of you who have ordered already. Yes. Thank you. People can also be toxic for you without being malevolent. Yes. And so as I mentioned in the beginning, there are different levels. And I want to give you the tools to deal even with the most toxic. And you know how much to apply to the actual cases in your life or not. Flying monkeys is an expression, Ella, for people who are the enablers of the narcissists. My whole family was in on undermining me, so I left it out. Yes, Anna, I feel what you're talking about. And you were brave in standing for yourself. Okay, just making sure, lots of comments, making sure I haven't missed any question. Can a toxic person change? Great question. If they know that they are being toxic, if they have that awareness and then they want to change, yes, it's possible. That's not the case, unfortunately, with many of them. If there is a sincere desire for them to change, it shows that there is that awareness and that willingness, then it's possible. Otherwise, no. Sometimes life will punish them so much, some of them will awake. Others will just keep on blaming that it's these people in my life that are the trouble. Many people asking about flying monkeys. I have no idea about the origin of this, but that's the term that is used when talking about narcissists. We all forget that there's only one life and it belongs to us. Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you clarify victim versus fake victim? Well, this you know in reality of the interactions. If a narcissist goes and abuse you and you set boundaries so that doesn't happen again, and now they say that they are being that you're being rude in setting those boundaries, that they were just joking, that you're being too insensitive, then they are the fake victim. Toxic people are often experts at being charming. You're right about that, Kim. They are manipulators. It's part of their toolbox. All right, so that completes the second part of this class on removing toxic people. Now the third part, and I'm aware we only have 15 minutes, is about setting boundaries. So sometimes we need to set boundaries with people who are toxic and bring nothing good for us. But sometimes we need to bring boundaries with people who are a mix, who perhaps even we want them in our life, but from time to time they go toxic, or there are some behaviors in them that it's not helpful. Maybe they are aware of it or not. Maybe they're not really toxic, they just have some flaws, as we all have. And when that happens, we also need to set boundaries. So, 3 aspects of setting boundaries. The first one is to be assertive in your communication. Be assertive in your communication. A lot of I have a course here on Insight Timer, letting go of regret. And I ask people, what is the biggest regret? Why are you taking this course? And a lot of the regrets are about relationships, staying too long in a relationship that didn't serve me, or trying something new while it wasn't really that thing and then losing the real thing. And the other half is around career choices. Staying in a job or choosing this career path, not trying that thing, not starting my business, etc. A lot of the regrets that people have in relationships, a lot of the resentment is about times where you didn't express yourself, where you were not assertive about your needs, where you didn't set boundaries. So you need to communicate assertively when the situation calls for it. What does it mean to communicate assertiveness with assertiveness? There are 2 features. It has to be clear and it has to be firm. You say what you want and you want what you say. This is not a license to be rude, to be blunt, to be irresponsible with our words. It means being unapologetic about our needs, unambiguous about what we're saying. And this comes naturally from a heart that knows what it wants and a mind that is unafraid to support that. It all starts with self-awareness. When you have awareness of your values, then you set boundaries when your values are being disrespected. If one of your values is independence, then you know when someone else is trying to control your life and you can set boundaries around that. If one of your core values is freedom, then you know when someone is trying to take your freedom away. and then you set boundaries against that. If you don't know what you want, if you don't have clarity about what you want, or if you don't value yourself because you struggle with low self-esteem, then you will naturally have poor boundaries. Then you communicate more meekly, and you're hoping that they will listen, understand, and do the processing for you and apply self-restraint and stop that behavior. It rarely happens. So we need to learn how to say no. When you really want to say no, you say no. There's no need for lengthy explanations. You don't need to overly justify yourself as if you're doing something wrong. No is a complete sentence. You may think that you can't say it, but go ahead and say it. You can. It could be just no. It could be sorry, but I have other commitments. I wish I could help, but I need to stay focused on A, B, and C. Not now, maybe later. Or no thanks. This is really not for me. So knowing your boundaries is important, and then communicating your boundaries. Your boundaries will not be respected if they are not communicated. As simple as that. They will not guess it. Not the toxic people. They don't have that etiquette. And when you're voicing your boundaries, you use clear and unapologetic language. Doesn't mean being violent. It means that there's no way to miss what you're trying to say. And you can use different measurements of strength depending on the person you're talking to, depending on their cultural background, depending on the relationship. Some people will get it a little bit. Some people will only get it if it's stronger. There's the story of the 4 horses, but I don't think I'm going to have time to say it here. If I have, at the end, you ask me and I'll share it about setting boundaries. So the important thing is to not second guess yourself, to speak with conviction, without diffidence. And this will require being comfortable with being disagreeable, being somewhat disagreeable. If you cannot be disagreeable in any circumstance, if that's painful for you, unthinkable for you, then you will end up being a doormat in some circumstances. It's okay to say something that is uncomfortable for the other person, to be a little bit disagreeable for the other person, because they asked for it the moment they stepped on your toes. In the book, I share around 30 different templates for how you can set boundaries. I'm just going to read some of them for you now. And by the way, the book is available for pre-order in paperback and digital formats. You can go to wiseconfidencebook.com. That will redirect you to the right place. So examples. I'll give you a couple of examples in each category. The first category is light. When you just lightly want to set a boundary. I disagree with that. I'm not happy with that. This is not going to work for me. That's a very personal question. Why do you want to know? Setting boundaries. Now, examples of medium strength boundaries. That doesn't look fair to me. No, I won't do that. You're crossing some boundaries here. What did you just say? I don't think I have to answer that question. I'm sorry, I don't have time for this right now. Now, turning up the heat. Stronger ways of expressing boundaries. And again, it depends on your wisdom and discernment in the moment to see which one you use. The strong ones. This is unacceptable. That's offensive. You need to lower your voice if you want me to listen. You cannot speak to me like this, and if you continue, I will leave the room. I have my reasons, but I don't need to give you any explanations. See how it feels for you to say something like that when you needed to say it and you didn't. The strength that you feel within yourself, the space that you have created. Actually, you have just claimed back your own space. When you communicate assertively like this, there is no ambiguity about what you just said. They will know exactly what you're asking for. If there is any doubt, or if they're not taking it seriously, then maybe your communication was too soft, too indirect for them. And you need to turn up the heat a notch or two. You need to communicate more strongly. Some people don't get it. You need to spell it out for them. But in all cases, it's better to communicate your boundaries in a calm and collected manner. If you communicate with anger and agitation, that will weaken your position. That may weaken your position and trigger the other person's defense mechanism. It can also show some insecurity, some lack of self-control on your side. And again, some people will exploit that because now they know which button they can press for you to lose it. So you can be strong and gracious at the same time. You can be clear, firm, unapologetic without being violent. Will it be disagreeable? Yes, it will still be disagreeable. Will some people shame you for having done that, saying that you have crossed boundaries in speaking like this, that I was just joking, that you are being insensitive, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that will happen. But you're being true to yourself and you're in the right. Even if no one around you sees it, you're in the right. I don't think I have ever ran an Insight Timer Live with as many comments as this one here. So it's definitely resonating. Too bad I don't have any helper today for collecting the questions, so I may miss some of them. Are setting boundaries and leaving the relationships two alternatives? Yes. No defense, no explanation, yes. 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 So all of these are in the book. I've just shared some of them with you. Okay, so many of you guys are writing down what I'm saying. So that's good. Yes. Will you post this on YouTube for the next? Yes, so this is being broadcasted on YouTube as we speak, and it's going to be available there for 24 hours to 48 hours. And then after that, it's just in the app. And by the way, if you are finding this class helpful, empowering, insightful in any way, consider leaving a donation to support my work. You can do that through the Insight Timer app. You can do that through the YouTube channel. There should be a donate button somewhere there. And of course, there are other ways that you can support my work, such as getting extra copies of either of my books to give to friends and family. And for those of you who are members of my Mindful Self-Discipline app, thank you for your ongoing support to my work. Thank you, Maurice. Now, so we talked about, let me just see where we talked about being assertive in your communication, knowing your boundaries, communicating them clearly, then being firm in your response. The moment you set boundaries, there's going to be a backlash, almost always. What happens if you communicate your boundaries? They are clear, they are reasonable, yet they are not respected. What do? Well, you have two options. You can tolerate that unfair treatment, then you'll get more of it. Or you can set stronger boundaries. There's that story, doesn't matter if it's true or not, a metaphor, an allegory of the boiling frog. That if you put a frog in a lukewarm water and little by little you increase the temperature, the frog will adapt, it will accept, it will tolerate, it will be okay in that temperature. And then you keep on increasing and it adapts again until there's a point that you have increased so much that it can no longer bear it. But at that point, it does not have the strength to jump out. It will be burned alive. It will be cooked alive. And that is the fate when we are tolerating again and again something that should never be tolerated. There's an ancient proverb, kill the monsters when they're small. Because when they're too big, there's nothing you can do anymore. So, what is the response when someone is crossing your boundaries and not respecting? It could be a calm but firm verbal rebuke, using some of those templates I've just shared. It could be a formal complaint to an authority. It could be leaving the room without saying a word. It could be changing the topic. It could be blocking them on social media. It could be not answering their calls anymore. It could be anything that feels effective and proportional. And then you scale your responses as the need arises. So there's an exercise here. I won't have time to go through it, so you will see it in the book. There's still a lot for me to cover today that we are not going to have time. This should have been a 2-hour class, but I won't be able to do a 2-hour class today. So let me just run through a couple more interesting bits. We've covered that. So you need to know your boundaries, you need to communicate your boundaries, and then you need to enforce your boundaries. And be ready to be labeled sensitive, rude, aggressive, uptight, or cold by the offending party. And don't let this type of gaslighting get to you. Don't let them turn the table. It's your turn now. Some people will not get it because they can't afford to get it psychologically. They have been that frog in the boiling water for too long. They can't jump out. You can still jump out, and now you're jumping out and they want to hold you back. Because no, I can't. I've tolerated, why can't you? Well, you did something that you shouldn't have done. Don't expect me to make the same mistake. You may need to be willing to hurt some people's feelings to some degree when they are so unaware that they are hurting yours. And doing so, it's not mean. It's not selfish. It's actually compassionate, because it will help them wake up. If they are able to wake up, that will help them wake up. Otherwise, you are just enabling their selfishness by showing that there are no consequences to their behavior. And when you do that, you're doing a disservice to yourself, and you're doing a disservice to all the future targets of their toxicity. So if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for others. And when they try to turn the tables, you can say, I know what you're trying to do here. It's not going to work. Just say that. That would turn them crazy. Okay, so the time is up. I have a whole bit on that we need to be, don't be nice, be powerfully good, and that goodness and niceness are different things. I had another bit on the need for us being unassailable in our spirit, so that we're not moved by all of this human drama. And then I was going to talk about wise kindness. Just like there is wise confidence, there is wise kindness. The same concept of being balanced. The balance between two opposing virtues. Being strong and assertive and boundaries is one virtue. Being kind, compassionate, tolerant is another virtue. Wise kindness, maybe the topic of another book, would be that middle. So the bottom line here, we talked about identifying and removing, knowing our influencers and going through that influencers detox. We talked about removing toxic people in our life, and we talked about, we started talking about how to set boundaries. Learning how to live inside out in the midst of messy human relationships, in the midst of toxic people, is difficult but essential. Learn this art little by little by practicing these techniques. So I'll leave you with some questions. What types of people does your aspirational identity have in their life? How does your ideal self communicate your needs, your wants, your opinions? How does it respond to toxicity and boundaries crossed? When you are interacting with other people in whatever sort of relationship, relate from that space, and your relationships will be an affirmation of who you are, rather than something that undermines your self-confidence and pulls you back to your old self. Okay. So I covered about 85% of what I wanted to cover. This is all chapter 17 of the book, Wise Confidence. I know that there are some questions here. Will there be a repeat of this class? Yes, tomorrow there'll be a repeat of this class, and then the recording is on YouTube for 1 to 2 days. Okay, I won't have time to go through most of these classes, most of these questions. Yes, all right. So yes, this class will be available on YouTube for 1 to 2 days, and then I remove it because it's supposed to be only live. Then from that point onward, together with all the previous classes of these seasons, they are part of my Mindful Self-Discipline app that also has many guided meditations and other tools. So you can get a free trial to that if you like. Now, this was class 10 of 12 in preparation for the launch, the official launch of this book. Class number 11 next week, same day, same time. We're going to be talking about self-discipline and self-confidence. How do you put all of these practices together into a routine so that you're actually implementing this in your life? We have covered many different concepts and practices, and it's not possible to do all of them. And that's not the idea either. How do you navigate this in a practical way and implement them so you're actually getting the changes and not just consuming the content? So that is the topic of next week's class. That's chapter 18 of the book. So thank you guys for all your love, all your questions, all your support. And I hope to see you all next class. And until then, stay disciplined and take care. Thank you.